someone. My lord, your time has come right between the eyes. Felled his master not by chance, away with pomp and circumstance. Come join our merry dance to the rhythm of goodbye. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the king of nothing really. Wave of a hand and a life of Riley. Pot Nazi, Pod King Billy. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the dear old mum, mummified on gin and rum. Smile and wave and just play dumb. Goodbye to the crown. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown.
Hello there and welcome to another edition of the Monarchy with me, Samson Sees, broadcasted to you only by Press TV. As always, we provide you viewers with an alternative angle when it comes to talking about the one and only UK. Not to mention the views of our prominent guests. Indeed, these sorts of topics won't be found anywhere on corporate television networks, so get comfortable and stick around. It's showtime. And that's just the beginning. So before we head into this week's topics, let's have an update on the news headlines from Britain.
News leaks show that British spies have employed dirty tricks to trap nations, hackers, terror groups, arms dealers and suspected criminals. The latest leaks by American whistleblower Edward Snowden, obtained by the NBC News on Friday, detail strategies used by a secret British spy unit called the Joint Threat Research and Intelligence Group. Releasing computer viruses, jamming phones and computers, using sexual honey traps, conducting cyber operations, and leading propaganda campaigns are reported to be among the JTRIG's techniques to spy on adversaries. Bullying in British armed forces are on the rise. According to the figures released in the latest Armed Forces Continuous Attitude Survey, 1 in 10 Army personnel claim to have been the victim of discrimination, harassment or bullying in a service environment during last year. Overall, 8% of the victims of abuse felt so distressed that they submitted a formal written complaint. That means almost 1,250 of the 2,500 Army personnel, including 3,446 officers who participated in the service, suffered abuse during last year. Britain and France are set to cooperate in developing a new generation of lethal drones expected to be used in the country's militaries. French President François Hollande and British Prime Minister David Cameron plan to sign a memorandum of understanding to build an Anglo-French Predator-type military drone. Britain's top arms producer BAE Systems and the French aircraft manufacturer Dassault Aviation will be working on the drone project. Gerry Adams has offered to meet the Orange Order to discuss parades in Northern Ireland. The Sinn Féin president promised change as he delivered the key address of his party's annual Ard Phase in Wexford. He said issues like an Irish Language Act, a Bill of Rights and the building of a peace centre at the Maze, Long Kesh former prison site, were not going away. Immigration Minister Mark Harper has quit after it emerged that his cleaner was in the country illegally. The Tory MP resigned and said sorry to the Prime Minister for the embarrassing blunder after it emerged she had no right to stay and work in the UK, even though she had given him papers in 2007 which seemed to show she did. The number of babies being born with alcohol poisoning in Britain has increased significantly over the past years because of mothers with drinking habits. According to the study conducted by the Centre for Social Justice think tank, some 313 babies were affected by exposure to alcohol in the womb in the UK last year, up by almost 3 times when compared with data from 10 years earlier. The study also found the number of those affected by fetal alcohol syndrome (FAS) in the country over the past 2 years.
British Prime Minister David Cameron has warned that Scottish independence will jeopardise UK stability and damage its international reputation.
We come as a brand, and a powerful brand. Separating Scotland out of that brand would be like separating the waters of the River Tweed and the North Sea. If we lost Scotland, if the UK changed, we would rip the rug from our own reputation. The fact is, we matter more in the world if we stay together. This is our country, and we built it together, brick by brick. Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, brick by brick. This is our home, and I could not bear to see it torn apart.
Cameron's remarks come as Scotland's Deputy First Minister Nicola Sturgeon dismissed Cameron's speech, saying the Premier does not have the courage to make his speech in Scotland in the presence of pro-independence groups. Shortly after Cameron's inflammatory remarks, Britain's Foreign and Commonwealth Office, FCO, asked the Spanish press to publish criticisms of Scottish independence. The UK embassy in the Spanish capital, Madrid, has asked the Spanish paper Tenerife News to print a memo about the challenges if Scotland leaves the UK. The request by the embassy's Director of Communications, Simon Montague, has been made in a letter published by the English language paper. The Scottish government said the letter proves that London is trying to stir hostility overseas to Scotland's independence, despite UK Prime Minister David Cameron's claim that the decision is purely a debate between Scots.
And as I've made clear, this is a decision that is squarely and solely for those in Scotland to make.
But why is Downing Street so keen to seek help from other European countries to hammer Scottish nationalist ambitions in gaining independence? An extract of Vladimir Nastorov's article on Strategic Culture Foundation draws a better picture.
A 1.5 million person demonstration in Barcelona in support of Catalonian independence and the fact that the Catalonian parliament is controlled by 2 separatist parties are the most noticeable signs of the new blossoming of separatism in Europe. Earlier in October 2012, British Prime Minister Cameron and First Minister of Scotland Salmond signed an agreement on the holding of a referendum in 2014 on the independence of this part of the United Kingdom. At the same time, the Flemish separatists from the New Flemish Alliance won the local elections in Belgium. Nationalists have also come to power in the Basque Country in Spain. The examples cited are only the tip of the enormous separatist iceberg of Europe, which includes over 40 political parties and civic movements which are part of the European Free Alliance. There is no doubt that October the 15th, 2012 was one of the most important dates in the modern history of Great Britain. The referendum will take place on September the 18th.
Do I believe that independence will win this campaign? Yes, I do. And I believe we'll win it by setting out a positive vision for a better future for our country, both economically and crucially also socially. And it's that vision of a prosperous and compassionate society, a confident society moving forward in Scotland, which will carry the day.
It is proposed that the British pound sterling would remain as the currency in an independent Scotland, and the Queen of Great Britain would remain the head of state.
The Bank of England sterling is part of the assets. They're as much Scotland's assets as London's assets. They're certainly not George Osborne's assets. We also are entitled to a share of assets.
At the same time, Scotland would have its own armed forces. British nuclear weapons would be removed from the territory of Scotland. In its attempts to convince the Scots to vote for independence in the referendum, nationalists are placing the greatest emphasis on the fact that if it secedes from Great Britain, Scotland will be able to independently control the natural resources which it is now obliged to share with the centre.
With independence, we could have the powers and responsibilities we need to seize opportunities, to build a wealthier and fairer nation, but also to face our major challenges. Because we'll also have to tackle a legacy of debt, of low growth, of social inequality bequeathed to us by Westminster control of our economy.
This refers to oil and gas reserves, which are being extracted on the Scottish Shelf in the North Sea. If the populace votes for independence, it will be declared on March the 24th, 2016. Before then, Edinburgh and London will have to agree on the terms for dividing Great Britain, which acquired its current form after the signing of the Acts of Union between England and Scotland in 1707. Scotland's gaining independence could threaten to demote Great Britain to the role of a second-rate power.
French comedian Dieudonné Mbala has been banned from entering the UK after he was reportedly planning a visit to support the footballer Nicolas Anelka over his use of the Canel gesture. The harsh reaction to the footballer Anelka gesture and banning a comedian just for allegedly using a gesture unpleasantly for Jews has once again brought back the British double standards on freedom of speech. I have interviewed 3 prominent guests to understand what is going on in the new anti-Semitism frenzy across the UK media.
The story started to unfold in Britain after Nicolas Anelka faced a lengthy ban after a controversial Canel gesture. A gesture which was initially not seen by British football fans as racist.
Well, I was at the game. The West Bromwich Albion were playing at West Ham. I was doing the commentary. And when he scored his goal, he went over and made the gesture that he did. I didn't know what it meant. I don't think anybody in the crowd knew what it meant, apart from several people that called in and said that it was racist, it was anti-Semitic.
FA and Kick It Out started to investigate Anelka's actions. He refused to apologise for his Canel gesture and denied any anti-Semitic intent behind the celebration.
If you do that after a goal, he must have known what he was doing, Nicolas Anelka. He said it was just a case of backing his friend, his comedian friend in France. But he must have known what that gesture meant. He must have done it for a reason. And it was calculated, because he scored a goal. Usually you're excited you've scored a goal. He was making the gesture when he should have been celebrating rather than doing that. So he knew exactly what he was doing, and I think because of that, he should be banned for quite some while.
A view which differs from Dr. Alderman's.
I understand there is an inquiry going on by the football authorities into a gesture that he made. Personally, I'm unmoved by it. If he wanted to make such a gesture, I think it's pointless to pursue him or to suspend him for a few matches if that's what's going to happen. And again, this simply gives publicity to those who interpreted his particular gesture as anti-Semitic, and there is of course an argument about that.
Shortly after that, the Home Office warned border officials not to let the French anti-Zionist comedian into the UK. Does humorous behaviour by a comedian now turn to a criminal behaviour when it comes to Israel?
Simply because a person espouses ideas, I don't think they should be banned from going from one country to another. You know, I'm an academic. I believe in academic freedom. I believe in the freedom of expression. As I say, I draw the line at incitement to violence. But simply for simply to criticise other people for their behaviour or for their views, including political views and religious views, I don't think should be a criminal offence.
Is an accusation of being anti-Semitic now turned into a tool to hammer any view which sounds unpleasant to Zionists?
You can criticise Israel, you can criticise Jews. Let's forget about Israel for a moment. You can criticise Jews, Jewish behaviour, what Jews do, what they eat, without being anti-Semitic. I think this needs a great deal more, a closer definition before we rush to judgment and say that because someone says something that a lot of Jews don't agree with, that it's necessarily anti-Semitic. Can I give you an example of this? I am a practicing Orthodox Jew, and I've been accused of being an anti-Semite because I have written about the relationship between Jews and Nazism in Germany in the 1930s. It's a very sensitive subject, of course, but simply because other Jews don't like it doesn't mean that what I say or the views that I express are necessarily anti-Semitic. I think we need to be very careful about the use of that word. There is a larger question here, I think, about freedom of expression in the internet age, and we have to realise in discussing this particular case that in the internet age, banning people from going from one country to another is simply silly and self-defeating.
So where is the line between freedom of speech and criticising Zionists?
Very important question. You know, I'm on record as saying that I believe in the right to give offence. I write a weekly newspaper column, and a lot of people are often offended by it. Well, they are within their rights to be offended, and I am within my rights to say what I think. Where I draw the line, and where I think most sensible people would draw the line, is at incitement to violence. I think in a civilised society you should be free to say what you like, provided what you say does not incite violence against others. And if you say something that outrages other people, well, that's just too bad. You know, I believe in the great saying of the French 18th century philosopher Voltaire: I might disagree with what you say, but I defend your right to say it.
Mr. Kazim sheds light on a deliberate attempt to confuse the anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel.
One of the things that we need to recognize is that there is a serious issue and serious problem, that one of the things that the Zionist lobby is trying to do is try and basically confuse the issue about anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. So when people correctly and legitimately say something that is anti-Israel and say something that is anti-Zionist, immediately what people try to do within the Zionist lobby is try and somehow make out that this is being anti-Semitic. And that is quite damaging, because what it in fact does is confuse legitimate protest and legitimate concern about what the Zionists are up to and what the Israelis are up to, and try and use the fig leaf of saying that something is anti-Semitic so that they can stop that criticism of Israel and stop that criticism of Zionism. And it's quite worrying that this is the direction that people, and it's quite outrageous in some senses that those of us who are legitimately trying to say that anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and when we're fighting racism, that these kind of things are unacceptable, our position is damaged because of this attempt at trying to create confusion between these two very different positions. And this is what Zionists often try and do, that they're trying to create a furore so that something is considered anti-Semitic when actually the concern was regarding or is regarding the issue of Zionism and what's going on and what the Zionists are actually doing. And I think we need to make sure that those two things are kept completely separate.
Do we have the same reactions against racism in football?
Well, I think no, it's been different. There's been certain players like John Terry got a ban for 3 or 4 games because he was seen by a supporter and he was caught on camera saying something racist towards another player. It didn't mention the other things that he was saying to a white player, which was, in my view, was bad as well. But that wasn't qualified. He was actually banned for being racist towards another player. We had Luis Suarez, exactly the same, got banned for even longer for being racist to Patrice Evra. So there's no set time limit. It's just each case is looked at independently, and that's how they go with it. The FA or the Football League, whoever's making the judgment. But if you're racist towards another player, you're going to get a ban and you're going to get a large fine as well.
Is the reaction to racism in sport in particular and other parts of society generally balanced? Is the British media so sensitive to racism when it comes to other minorities, Muslims for example?
I think one of the things that we've seen develop, and it's been developing and fermenting for some time, and it's the direction that the politicians, it's the culture that has actually been created in this country, where what is said against Muslims, which incites anti-Muslim hatred. And we've seen this borne out in the way that the far right has risen in the UK. And what we've also seen is that with the rise of the far right, when we have specific demonstrations or Muslims come out to demonstrate, we see the Israeli flag, the Zionists, and the people on the far right, the English Defence League, actually standing shoulder to shoulder against Muslims. And we need to recognize that the reason that these people in themselves are a symptom of the problem. They're a symptom of the malaise that affects British politics and what's actually going on in terms of the hype that's created around stirring up and making comments that are inflammatory towards Muslims and saying the kind of things that that politicians often say. And if that anything that is said against the Muslims, if we were to change that, and instead of the word Muslim being used, if we were to use the word Jew, then the whole connotation of that terminology, whether it's in the media, whether it's in the language of the politicians, would suddenly take on a completely different meaning. And the idea of anti-Semitism being unacceptable will correctly raise its head, that how can you say that against the Jews? And yet that same language, when it's said against Muslims, it is completely considered legitimate.
Well, that's all we have time for, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean wrapping it up right there. Remember, you can be in touch and discuss these issues with us whenever you like. Simply add us on Facebook. Our page is UK Desk Press TV. Or send in your emails to britain@presstv.ir. Continue to watch The Monarchy, because The Monarchy will certainly continue to watch Britain. See you on the next episode, God willing. Take care. Stay well. Ciao.
Poacher come with his poacher's gun, out in the woods to shoot someone. My lord, your time has come, right between the eyes. Felled his master not by chance, away with pomp and circumstance. Come join our merry dance to the rhythm of goodbye. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down, goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown, goodbye to the king of nothing really. Wave of a hand and a life of Riley. What Nazi pod King Billy, goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the dear old mum, mummified on gin and rum. Smile and wave and just play dumb, goodbye to the crown.